You know, I was just a kid when that song, Hot Blooded by Foreigner, came out, and I remember thinking to myself, this is the greatest hard rock song I've ever heard in my life. And then their next single came out, and I thought, no, this is the best hard rock song I've ever heard in my life.
Was that one Blue Morning, Blue Day?
Yeah, and
Yep.
eventually I would get to say, this has got to be the best ballad I've ever heard, and this has got to be the best pop song I ever heard, because you guys were so versatile. Well, Lou Gramm, the iconic original lead singer of Foreigner and Rock and Roll Hall of Fame member, is back touring with the current lineup of the band, celebrating 44 years of the Foreigner 4 album, and next year it'll be the band's 50th anniversary. The tour kicks off on December 4th and 5th at the Capitol Theater in Port Chester, New York. Then they head to the St. George Theater on Staten Island on Saturday, December 6th, and December 11th and 12th at the Wellmont Theater in Montclair, New Jersey. What a big thrill to welcome original lead singer from Foreigner, Lou Gramm, to the program today.
Thanks, David.
If I could, I want to take you back to the very beginning of your career when you were touring with another group. This is before Foreigner, and you were touring around with Kiss at the time. Is that correct?
Yes, I was in a band in my early 20s called Black Sheep, and we did deep cuts from albums from different artists that we liked. That's how we started out. We didn't do any top 40 or anything, and a little at a time we started doing our own original music, and after a year and a half or 2 years, we were doing 90% of all of our songs were our own. And they were darn good songs because we would play at local clubs and stuff, and people would be going crazy for us. And we got the opening spot for the show in Syracuse, New York, to open for Procol Harum.
Wow.
Yep. And Procol Harum was on Chrysalis Records, and one of the higher-ups of Chrysalis Records was there to see Procol Harum, and they really liked what we were doing. And they signed us to a record deal. They were strictly a European label. They told us when they signed us that they were just about to set up headquarters in New York and L.A. So we recorded a single. It was called Stick Around.
From 1974, that was Black Sheep with Stick Around, a song co-written by our guest today, Lou Gramm. You know, that was a pretty good song. I can see why they signed you.
Very, very cool rock song.
Yeah.
And it started charting, you know, mid-charting in the 50s and stuff. And then we got a call from them saying that they had changed their mind and they're not going to set up any headquarters in New York. And at that point, we asked for our release because it sounds like if we were going to make it anywhere, we'd have to go make it in Europe because there were going to be no help in the States. So we asked for our release, and we eventually got signed to Capitol Records, and we did 2 albums for them. So at that point, they hooked us up for a full tour, and this was a long tour, with Kiss, opening for Kiss, which was great for us because they toured long and hard, and they were, you know, blockbusters on the road, and we thought we could hold up to them with our new music and maybe learn a few things too, you know. So on our first show was in Boston at the Boston Academy of Music, and we went on and did our set. And after our last song, we got a standing ovation.
Wow.
We didn't know what to do. We started walking off stage, and we saw Kiss's tour manager, and he said, "Hey, you're getting an ovation. Go play one more song." And we went out there and played one more song, and they gave us another ovation. But we walked off the stage and thanked the tour manager for letting us answer our encore. And then we went out into the crowd after we cleaned up and saw Kiss's set, which was awesome, you know.
Yeah.
And the guys in the band got into our band station wagon and started driving home to Rochester, New York, from Boston. And this was Christmas Eve, 1974. And I remember getting home at about 3:30 or 4 in the morning and getting into bed. And about an hour and a half later, I got a call from our road crew, head of our road crew, saying that the weather had turned bad, and on the New York State Thruway just past Albany, they had slid off the New York State Thruway, and the truck tipped over.
Oh, my goodness.
And they said they had bumps and bruises, but nobody was hurt other than that. And he says that there was a big thruway truck that was able to pick our truck back up on its wheels, load it on like a flatbed, and took it off the thruway to a gas station east of Albany, just west of Albany, and he says that's where they were at 5 in the morning. He says, we're freezing out here because the gas station's closed. He says, and we don't want to miss spending Christmas with our relatives. Do you think you could get in the bandwagon and come and get us? So even though I was exhausted, I got up, I called Bruce Turgan, our bass player. I picked him up, and we went back to the place where the truck was, and that's where the crew was, and we picked them up. Before we left, we tried to get the back door open of the box on the truck to see what the damage was, but it was jammed, and we couldn't get it open. So we all went home. We had a great Christmas, but early Monday morning, a couple of us went back to where the truck was, and by that time, the people who worked at the gas station were able to force the door open. And when we looked at the equipment inside, we saw the legs on the Hammond B3 completely broke off. Oh. The drums were smashed and out of round. In other words, they were not round anymore, they were oblong. And some of the mic stands went through the bottom of the speaker cabinets and pierced the speakers, and the heads had fallen off the top of the cabinets and smashed on the ground, and were all broken tubes all over the place. Oh. So 4 days after Christmas, we were supposed to be in Florida, Miami, to play the Miami Highlight with KISS, and we had no truck, and about 20% of our equipment was usable. So we called KISS's tour manager and told him what happened, and he said, you guys got to go right to Capitol Records. You've got 2 albums out, and you're touring with us. He says, potentially, he says, and I believe that's going to make your album platinum, and you're going to be getting great royalty checks, and whatever you borrow from Capitol, you could pay them back. And so we went to Capitol, and we called the woman we knew there and told her what happened, and she goes, oh, my God, what a disaster. She says, well, we're at a big meeting now. I got to bring this up to the upper echelon and see what they say. She said, I'll call you back later today. So about 7 o'clock at night, she called us back, and she says, I don't know how to tell you this, but the people in charge of Capitol don't want to front you any money.
From 1977, that was Foreigner with Cold as Ice. We're speaking with original lead singer of Foreigner, Lou Gramm, today on the Vintage Rock and Pop Shop. And we were going through your very early career pre-Foreigner, and we just got to the point where your group Black Sheep was dropped by Capitol Records, and, you guys, it looked like you were on your way, and this was just a huge blow.
Yes, judging by our first performance, we were going to make a lot of fans on this tour, and maybe the album would go gold or something,
Right.
And that would launch us into our next album, but they decided that they didn't think it was worth it to put any more money into us, and they dropped us from the label. So we would meet at the drummer's house. He had a farm out in Albion, New York, where we used to rehearse. We used to meet once every 2 or 3 weeks over there and try and figure out what we were going to do. But at one of those meetings, we were trying to decide what to do. My dad called me and said, some guy named Mick Jones called looking for you. And I said, oh, you leave his number? And he says, yeah. I said, okay, I'll call him when I get home. So we had met Mick because Black Sheep's manager was an A&M Records representative out of Buffalo. And Spooky Tooth, the band that Mick was in, played at the Auditorium Theater in Rochester. So all of the Black Sheep members went, and they sounded very good. And after the show, we got to meet them. And under my arm was the 2 Black Sheep albums. So I met Mick and talked to all the other guys, too. And before I left, I gave the 2 albums to Mick. I says, we enjoyed your performance very much. You guys are great. Here, listen to these albums when you get a chance. This is what we're all about. And he said, oh, great, thank you. And I didn't think I'd ever hear from him again, But when he called my dad, it was because he liked the way I sang, and he wasn't in Spooky Tooth anymore. When I talked to Mick, he said he was putting together a new band. He had a very well-known managing department, and the manager had a penthouse suite on Broadway and 42nd Street, and so the offices of the suite were all the way around the outside, and on the inside was this huge empty room, he says, where we could practice and write songs. So he asked me to come and audition. I didn't have the job. He says, can you come down and audition? I said, I'll let you know. So I talked to the guys at Black Sheep, because I didn't want to feel like I was betraying them.
Sure.
And they said, Lou, are you kidding me? We had a short but good run. We're all done now, Why don't you see what you can do, We're rooting for you. So I called Mick back, and he flew me down to Manhattan at a recording studio. And he played me 3 songs. First one was Feels Like the First Time. Second one was At War with the World. And I think the third one was Woman Oh Woman.
Mm-hmm.
He wrote the words down for me and sang me the melody and sent me out into the recording room to get a sound on my voice and start singing those songs. Well, it took a couple of run-throughs for me to get comfortable with it, but I nailed all of them. And by the end of that audition, nobody said anything to me. They said they really liked what I did. And Mick asked me if I would come to his apartment for dinner tonight. I said, sure. So I went over there, and we had a great dinner. His wife cooked. And then he took me into his music room, which was an extra bedroom that he converted into. He had electric piano there, small organ. He had guitar amp and a mic and a single column speaker for a PA and a real good TX 4-track reel-to-reel recorder. So he started playing guitar ideas for me. And there was one that I particularly liked. I asked him if we could work on that. But we did, and that was the beginning of the song Long, Long Way From Home.
We're chatting with Lou Gramm today on the Vintage Rock and Pop Shop, and he's going to be making appearances with the current lineup of Foreigner, beginning on this short tour Wednesday, December 3rd and 4th at the Capitol Theater in Port Chester, New York. We just heard the song Long, Long Way From Home from Foreigner's debut album of 1977, and you were saying that you guys got together, you and Mick Jones got together and wrote that in the first night that you met.
Yep, and by the next day we had it pretty much completed, and we went into the rehearsal room at our manager's penthouse suite where his office was, and we worked on it with the band, and it sounded great. So almost every night I would go over to Mick's, and we would write another song. And before you know, we had about 6 songs, and we demoed them and started sending them out to all the record companies. And the ones that liked the songs made an appointment to come and hear us at our practice studio, and we would play the songs live for them. And to a man, they all said they liked it, and they went away and never heard from them again. And we couldn't understand it. So finally, Atlantic Records came, and John Kolodner was the head of A&R. He had been working at Atlantic for a few years, and he was just cutting his teeth. But after the people at Atlantic left, he doubled back and came into the room again and talked to us. He goes, guys, your songs are great. They have a lot of potential. But the state of radio is now, he says, and it's been that way for quite a while, that single songs on the radio are no more than 3 minutes and 15 or 3 minutes and 30 seconds. A lot of them are just under 3 minutes. He says, that's what the stations want, and that's all they'll play. If you got a 4 or 4.5 minute song, they won't even play it. So what we've got to do, we've got to take 2 or 3 of these really good songs and edit them down to 3 minutes, 15 seconds. So he helped us do that, and they sounded great that way. There was no fluff, because even on the demos, Mick was playing long solos, and the out choruses were another 2.5 minutes long, just too much.
Right.
And so we trimmed away the fat, and Atlantic Records came back again, and we played it for the president. And at the end of playing it for the president, he went into his briefcase and pulled out contracts. And it wasn't very much longer than that. We started recording our first album. And we were recording it at Atlantic Record Studios on Columbus Circle. And when we went in there, the person who just left the night before was Aretha Franklin.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, so we were sniffing around there trying to get some of her juju on us,
Of course.
Yep. And the recording was a blast. It was not easy, but it was a blast, and kind of the rest is history.
It sure is. And we talked about your history before Foreigner. Who were your influences as a vocalist growing up?
Well, I would say Steve Winwood.
Okay.
John Lennon, for sure. Paul Rogers.
Yep.
the lead singer of Humble Pie, Steve Marriott.
Mm-hmm.
You know, I think that was probably about it.
So on this current tour, the focus is really on the Foreigner 4 album, which just got a deluxe re-release, a little box set and everything. And was that the impetus for you to join the current band on these upcoming shows?
Well, I think we wanted to make a big deal out of that since it was our most popular album. So the current band and myself, through management and booking agencies, booked a 7 or 8 show tour in the Northeast, Connecticut, New York City, New Jersey, Philadelphia. We're going to be doing those shows. And then directly after that, we're going to be doing a regular tour playing songs from the whole catalog.
Well, we should play a song from the Foreigner 4 album of 1981, and I think there's a unique story behind the hit single, Waiting for a Girl Like You.
Well, there is, yeah. We had the music recorded, and it sounded awesome, and I was getting set to go in and do the vocals, and I was feeling good about it. I couldn't wait to get in there and start singing. And Mick Jones and Mutt Lange were producing, and they were in the control room. They were right by the recording equipment, making sure everything was just as it should be. And as the intro to the song started playing, and I was getting ready to sing, I saw the door open up to the control room, and in walks this drop-dead gorgeous, beautiful woman, young woman, and she walks down the stairs, and in front of the board there's a sofa, and she sits down on the sofa and just smiles at me, and I started really getting into the lyrics, and I was singing to her, and she would smile and act very demure, and it really encouraged me to put as much feeling into the song as I could. It was the right moment for that. And just as I hit the high note at the end, and then the outro came in to end the song, she then got up and gave me a big smile and walked up the stairs and out the door. And when the song ended, Mick and Mutt said, "Lou, that's the one. That's an awesome version." And I said, "Who was that young woman that came in and sat down on the sofa while I was singing?" And they look at each other and they go, "What are you talking about?" And I thought to myself, boy, this is very strange. And then I thought to myself, why, you dirty dogs. You probably set that up so that I would put extra feeling into my singing. I think it was all a ruse. But it was very cool. Very cool.
And you never found out who this person was, this woman.
I would like to have found out, but I never found out. and I never heard any more. But I asked questions about it, for the next number of days, and who is she? Who is she someone who works here? Is it someone that you guys know? And they said, we don't even know what you're talking about.
Well, who knows? Maybe she'll turn up at the Capitol Theater in Port Chester, New York on December 3rd.
Well, considering how long ago that was, I don't know if I want to see her now.
Oh, my God, you're killing me here. I also heard, and I don't know if it's true, that young Thomas Dolby plays on...
Yeah, on and off on the whole album, but yes, definitely I'm Waiting for a Girl Like You. And he the funny thing is, he was not a Foreigner fan to that point. He had... People had asked him about the band once or twice in an interview, and he didn't have very many good things to say about the band. But when we were prepping for Foreigner 4, we asked him if he would consider doing some synthesizer parts, and we sent him some roughs of the song. And apparently that knocked him out, and he flew over and played some great parts on that, on Jukebox Hero, on a number of things.
That song was nearly a number 1 song, a number 2 hit from Foreigner, Waiting for a Girl Like You.
I think we stayed there for 12 weeks at number 2, hoping to get up to number 1. You know who was number 1, don't you?
Who was number 1?
Olivia Newton-John, Let's Get Physical.
Oh, well, forget it. Yeah, there's no way.
Yeah, right? I mean, that's a home run, right?
Well, if you're going to be trampled by anyone, it might as well be Olivia Newton-John.
Yes, sure.
Yeah. Well, as we start to wrap up here, we know that Mick Jones is not feeling well. His health is such that he can't tour, but if he were able to tour, I'm sure he would have joined you on these shows.
I'm sure he was. He was not even well enough to perform at the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame.
Yeah, I know.
Which was a tragedy.
Yeah.
Because he and I had talked so much in a number of years before that about why we couldn't understand why we weren't in the Hall of Fame when we had all the credentials. As a matter of fact, we have as many top 40 singles as the Beatles had. Isn't that a great statistic?
It is. I mean, I was looking at, the first greatest hits compilation, which was called Records. Yeah. And I was you just look at the cover of that album, and it shows Cold as Ice, Double Vision, Head Games, Waiting for a Girl, Feels Like the First Time, Urgent, Dirty White Boy, one of the best riffs ever, Jukebox Hero. I mean, it's all incredible stuff. You would think it's just a natural. You would be first ballot.
Well, it was also some goings-on within the upper echelon of the Hall of Fame that kept us out. We were eligible 20 years before we got in.
That's why when I heard the news that you were getting in, I was confused because I assumed that you were already in it.
Well, there was one guy who worked at the Hall of Fame who had the most clout in saying yes or no before the vote went to the board of directors. And we were nominated 2 or 3 times, and he seemed to always put the kibosh on us.
Huh.
And you know who he turned out to be? While all this was going on, he was Mick's best friend.
Are you kidding me? That's incredible.
Yep. That's so bizarre.
It is.
Yep. They used to play racquetball. They used to work out together. They and the wives used to go out to dinner and to Broadway shows and stuff. They were close buds. And Mick knew who he was and what he did for the Hall of Fame, but couldn't imagine that he was the one that was keeping us out, and he was the one.
That's crazy.
Yeah,
that is crazy. Well,
so we finally got in, but Mick was too ill to accept the award or perform.
Right, and had it been 20 years ago, then Mick would have been able to perform with you on stage, and you deserved it 20 years ago. And and I've had this complaint before about the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame that they seem to skip artists from the 60s and the 70s and the 80s and jump right to people that, are more or less recent. And you think to yourself, wait a minute, we got to work on these guys from the 60s and the 70s. Let's do it while we can, while they're still here.
Unbelievable. I mean, I think we had 7 or 8 albums, and every one of them went multi-platinum.
Yeah.
And I guess that just wasn't enough for Mick's friend.
Well, when they brought in that fan vote, that's when I think things started to change a bit.
That's exactly right.
And, it's the way it should have been all along.
Their votes counted for something.
Yeah, it should have been that way all along, really.
Yes, it should.
Yeah, because we're the ones buying the records.
That's right.
We're going to the
count for something.
It should. Well, once again, I want to thank you for appearing on the show, and for more information about where you're going to be with Foreigner on this tour, people can go to foreigneronline.com. But for these purposes, it's December 3rd and 4th at the Capitol Theater in Port Chester, New York. Saturday, December 6th at the St. George Theater in Staten Island, New York. Sunday, December 7th at the Wind Creek Event Center in Bethlehem, PA. Tuesday, December 9th at the Toyota Oakdale Theater in Wallingford, Connecticut. And Thursday and Friday, December 11th and 12th at the Wellmont Theater in Montclair, New Jersey.
And by the way, I've got a solo album coming out. The single will be out in February, and the album will be out in March.
Fantastic. Well, thanks again for appearing on the show. I really appreciate it, and good luck with all the upcoming gigs, and have a great rest of your day. Take care.
Talk to you again.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye now.